Welcome to the DrVtach Show. This podcast is long-form conversation hosted by DrVtach with the top guests in the world of esport, owners, managers, pros, semi-pros, former pros, and content creators of mini games. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Well, okay, guys, welcome to the DrVtach Show. Thank you for joining in. I got a special guest, a really good friend, phenomenal content creator. His name is SUPR. He goes by SUPR. Seth SUPR Hoffman is a former Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and Vegas 2 and Siege pro player who competed at a professional level for over 15 years while earning multiple championships across 3 separate titles. SUPR's led the Soniqs to the NAL Championship and Top 6 World Championship finish in 2021. A renowned captain, leader, and now manager, SUPR contribution to the game goes beyond his professional play and content creation in contribution to the improvement of competitive scene in Rainbow Six Siege. Earn him an end-game charm. SUPR, welcome.
Wow, that was a lot. You're making me sound way more important than I actually am. I appreciate that.
But you are important. You are important to the scene. I just think, to be really honest, you deserve more than what you get to be known. I think you should, seeing the stuff that you've done, and I compare you right there up with Fatality. You probably know him, Jonathan Wendell.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far with the comparison, but I like to think within the smallish community that is Rainbow Six Siege, I have made an impact on some people.
Oh, you have definitely, you have. Even to me, man, because it's really hard to find people that know their stuff. Also, to find people that you could trust what they say. A lot of these players, I always have my doubts. Okay, and I'm like, okay, if SUPR says it, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna agree with it. You're very mature. You know what you're talking about. You know the stuff. You know your Rainbow Six. You know the pro scene about this. And I'm like, this guy knows a lot about what he's talking about.
Well, I at least like to think so, and I do a good job of if I don't, just pretending I do either way. So, if you just talk and act like you're really confident, people will just believe you no matter what you're selling them. You know what I'm saying?
That's so true. Hey, drink this water. It's phenomenal. Yeah. People will end up drinking it.
Yeah.
How did it all started for you, man? How did gaming started for you? I mean, I didn't have an Atari, but I did have the first Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people who at least follow Siege or are familiar with who I am know that I'm older in terms of like the gaming community. I turn 35 next year, and I was a pro until I was 33. So obviously, that's a long time for a pro to play. Yeah, trying to remember that long ago. Basically, I have been alive and playing video games since video games became a thing, essentially. As far back as I can remember, I remember playing the original Nintendo, like Super Mario or Duck Hunter and those kind of games, and then Sega. And yeah, I mean, it's video games I feel like for most kids or most adults now of my generation, video games were just an ingrained part of their life, growing up. And now I'm one of the lucky people who get to continue having a career and being able to be involved in video games where, obviously as you get older, a lot of other people are forced to or choose to just move on to something else. But yeah, I don't know how I got started. I think it's just that's what people did when I was younger. That was the new thing. That's what everyone liked to do. It was the cool new thing, as weird as that sounds, about video games.
Yeah, it's definitely is grown into a lot, younger generations, and that's the first thing they get into. either if it's with Nintendo or the DS, handheld. Now you get gaming on your cell phones,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes to a point that now gaming is part of everybody's life. I don't care. And my mom plays Candy Crunch,
Well,
and
I
I'm
think that's what makes gaming one. That's why gaming is such a big industry. That's why people want to invest money into esports and video games and things like that, is because with most things like sports, whatever it may be, uh, it's always going to be like more sided towards kids, towards adults, or maybe towards males or females. Very rarely is it kind of an everything like market. And for video games, what the truth is that old, young, middle-aged people, men and women, anybody can play, anybody likes to play. It's not exclusive to anyone. And so it's basically a market that 100% of people are or can be interested in. So it's a huge target audience for advertisers, which puts, obviously that's the money that goes into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of money into it. I'm in shock of how much money is into it. I didn't know until I started getting really deep into it and started looking how all these companies, PC, Nvidia, from motherboards, everything,
Mm-hmm.
they attract, and people like they could choose to get, the more known you are, you start getting sponsorships.
Right.
That's where you're going to start making money as well. And I even consoles as well selling like crazy. I seen console come and go. I remember Dreamcast come and go. I remember 3DO. I don't know if you're probably familiar with that one. That was the discs were like a record. They were huge.
Yeah.
Come and go. That failed, and Atari tried to make a comeback, and it failed. But all these companies, they know there's money in it. Microsoft took a big risk with the first Xbox, and they made a really big boom with the 360. So there's a lot of money. There is a lot of money in gaming, and now with the pro scene coming in, there's tons of money, tons of money. So a lot of these young guys, they try to build themselves, try to grow. I see I mean, you probably know more than I do, and I know you do, but I see them growing on their content, try to get good at what they're at, and then they try to go into pro scene, try to go to the pro league. No matter which game, it could be Rainbow, it could be Fortnite. That's another one that's, they make a lot of money as well.
Yeah, what I always tell like up and coming players, because I mean the truth is that like, so esports is a big market obviously for games, but esports by the developers is essentially used as like an advertising tool for those games. Like the reason Rainbow Six Siege, for instance, has a pro league is because it advertises the game. And that's really the truth for anything. With like the only one I would say maybe where it's kind of eclipsed the game itself is like Counter-Strike, where like the Counter-Strike esports scene kind of is the game. But like for most games, like that's a way for them to advertise the game. So if the whole point of the esport is for them to try to advertise the game or advertise the players, then why would you as a player who in theory is like very good to obviously reach a pro level, and people are interested in watching like especially in America, people love to watch people who dominate or are like very good, right?
Right.
That's what's interesting to them. So I always tell like players is, why would you not try to make content? Like whether you're streaming or doing YouTube or like TikTok now and that kind of thing, all you're doing is hurting yourself by not making content, because you could end up giving yourself a career even if you don't become a successful pro player, if you're able to like turn your content into something that people enjoy. And obviously there is a issue, I think, in esports as well, at least at the competitive side, where like a lot of players aren't necessarily that comfortable like in front of a camera or doing that kind of thing. They kind of just want to play the esport and be done with it. But like, I really think it's important for prospective players to try to like come out of their shell if that is the case, and like put some stuff out there, because what you also don't realize is like, okay, even if you don't really care about the content side for like, oh, you want to make money or you become, a bigger brand or whatever, you're marketing yourself to the teams too. Because like, if you're streaming all the time, and let's say you're like a tier 2 level player, right? And this is for any game, but I'm using Siege as an example because I know you play Siege. Is like, if you're like a tier 2 player and you stream all the time or you make videos, other pros will watch that. They'll check out your stream. If they think you're decent at all, they'll check you out. And if they're watching your stream and you look like, hey, wait a minute, this guy looks like he's pretty good, then you could indirectly be giving yourself a chance at like becoming a pro player just by putting content out there. So, I mean, to me, there's a lot of benefits of content and not really a lot of downside. I think for a lot of people, it comes down to like time and comfortability. But I definitely think it's like, if you are at all interested in turning gaming into a career in terms of like esports or like putting stuff out there, you have to do content. Like, you just have to try to get comfortable with it.
I think, didn't Bolo went through that?
Well, yeah, I mean, some of these guys are so big. Like Bo, he was such a big content creator before he even turned 18 that like people kind of thought that he wouldn't even bother to like pursue pro because he was already making so much money and he was already so like popular just from content. And obviously like his passion directed him towards esport, but he was literally a 17-year-old making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Jeez. With the choice to like, it was a choice for him. He just wanted to do it. And there are examples of that now. I think like this Uzi is a guy who I think if he wanted to pursue esports, he probably could, but he makes a good amount of money doing content, so he hasn't really pursued the esport. But it's like, isn't it nice to just have options? Like, if you could set yourself up for that.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that I mod for over like 30 players, especially pros, and the Rainbow, and including I got some also on Halo. And I tell these guys all the time, I said, listen, you're young, you have a future, but you got to remember that pro scene doesn't last a lifetime. It's not going to last, 20, 30 years for you. You got to think about what's going to happen afterwards. You're like, yeah. And for some odd reason, they're just not thinking. You got to capture and gain your followers and keep them close to you, because at the end, when you stop pro league, you stop competing, you can still have them and still have your following and still make money on the side while streaming, doing content creation.
Yeah, well, when you're young, you're not thinking about the after. You're like pursuing your dream or your passion, right? Like in this example, people want to be a pro player. So for a lot of people, they don't go to, maybe after high school, they don't go to college, they don't really get a job or something, and they just put all their time into becoming a pro player. And that's fine. Like, if that's your dream and that's what you want to do, sure. But you also have to realize the sacrifices you're making to do that. And so if you're putting yourself in a position where time-wise, you're going to be a little bit behind because you didn't pursue a secondary education or a trade school or, get experience working in a job, you may as well try to turn that esport into more than just being a pro player and trying to turn it into something, like you said, where once you're done playing, because the truth is like, my situation is very unique where I was able to play pro for so long. Most people, they'll play a year, and after that year, they'll either get dropped and they won't be able to make it back to pro league, or they'll prove they're good enough and they'll stick around and they'll play 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years. Rainbow Six Siege is a game where it's like, it's kind of been lucky enough where the game is now 8 years old, but most games don't have a pro league that lasts that long. So like at tops, you're playing like 4 or 5 years usually in a pro league. And the truth is it's an esport, sure, but and this is not counting like the League of Legends and the Counter Strikes and some of that. I'm like I said, I think the purposes of this podcast mainly we'll just talk Siege, since I know that's like both of us are more involved in that community. But like if you're a pro Siege player, you're not making enough money just as a player where that's going to set you up once you're done playing. Like, you know, a few of them with winnings and stuff like that are making probably over $100,000, maybe $200,000 a year if they're like a really successful player who wins a lot. But the majority of them are not. And unless you're doing content to like build your brand and make money on the side and bring sponsors, once you're done playing, you're not going to have like a lot to fall back on if you've sacrificed a lot for it. So it's important to have like to try to build something for yourself in terms of brand, so that once you do stop playing, you have the option to where you could go back to school and you could stream and try to, you know, play, you know, pay for school or apartment or whatever while you're going to school, like whatever you want to do, pay for trade school, like that kind of thing. Like a former teammate of mine, Easily, he was able to, he was a pretty big streamer when he did it on Siege. And when he retired, he, I think he went to a trade school and now he's become like an airplane mechanic. And, you know, that's a pretty high paying job.
Yeah.
And he's able to do that. He was literally only able to do that and support himself to do that because he made enough money from the brand that he built for himself that he was able to like kind of carry himself to his next career by streaming. And if you don't have that option, then the truth is, like, when you're done playing, you won't have options of what you're going to do. You're going to be forced to just jump right into a job. Because if you're let's say a 24-year-old who you finished playing Pro League, you've never had a job, you didn't go to school, all you've done is play whatever video game, and you didn't really build any brand for yourself, like, if you're lucky enough, your parents will maybe be able to support you still at that age. But the truth is, like, if you're a 24-year-old, like, you should have some experience out there, because it's going to be, you're not going to look as attractive to jobs hiring if you're a 24-year-old and your experience is you played video games. So it's important to, like, this is not something that a young adult is going to be thinking about who's pursuing a passion in video gaming, but it is something that you need to consider. Like, establishing a brand, even if it's against your comfortability, is important, because you never know what it could lead to, and maybe it like can protect you a little bit down the road when it comes to a point when you kind of need to figure out what you want to do after playing.
That is so true. I even told this to Packer, you know, Packer.
Yeah.
And I explained it to him. I said, listen, you know, stream as much as you can often, you know, build your own fan, get your own community, because you never know. There was one thing that stuck to my mind, that my favorite Siege player is actually Kickstar. He's the one, me seeing him got me really into, because I was a Battlefield guy. And once I saw, I think it was on YouTube, I saw Kickstarter. I'm like, who is this guy? And I was like, wow. And I saw that 7-second kill, you know, ace that he did. And that just like blew my mind. But there's one thing that he said. He said, the reason why I don't want to go back into pro scene and compete again, because basically, like, what he was saying, that he didn't want to feel like he's walking on eggshells. He says, you never know. They could say, hey, you're no longer with us.
I mean, that's 100% true in regards to, and I think this is an issue for every game, is like, in esports, job security is very like fickle. You know, if you could get dropped or benched at any moment, and, you know, maybe another team wants you, but if not, what are you going to do? And it's not like, let's say you're a professional baseball player and you get benched and you're still getting paid your full amount and your contract's all guaranteed. And, like, you know, some esports, maybe they're lucky enough to have things like that, and the majority of esports, you know, if you get benched, it's a much reduced pay rate. The contracts aren't necessarily going to be guaranteed. So, you know, and the truth is like, as a competitive player, it is like, and this is kind of anything with anything competitive, sports, whatever, especially if you're on a team, is it's much more stressful to be a competitive player, because you're always thinking about winning. If you're doing bad, you're in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, like, are these guys going to try to kick me off the team? So
right, yeah.
Very few players get in a position where they can kind of like call their own shots and kind of dictate what's going on the team, and maybe those are the guys who are a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, for if you have the like for most people, if you have the option to do content or do like an esport, they would choose the content because you're setting your own schedule. It's much less stressful. But for a lot of people, like for me, for example, I have like the competitive desire where I wanted to like compete and play and like try to be the best. And not everybody obviously is going to feel that way. For some people, it's just like, I don't need to deal with the stress. I could just make more, because the truth is, if you build your brand up, you'll make more doing content creation than you would from like esport anyway.
Correct. Yeah, that's what basically like the route you took. You started as a pro, and then you became now content creator for Soniqs, and then you stuck with Sonic. I mean, you've been with Sonic since you first started, right?
Well, that's not even necessarily true. After playing, I'm the general manager of Soniqs, and I actually I have a pretty big brand for myself that I built while I was playing, but like I consider myself a part-time streamer. Like I don't, if you look at my like hours on Twitch, for instance,
Correct.
I'm like under like 60 hours a month generally, which that's nothing. If that's basically co-streaming NAL and that kind of thing. So like,
Right.
I don't even consider myself a full-time streamer. And the truth is I could support myself just by streaming if I wanted to, but like that's not really my goals. Weren't to become a content creator. It was just kind of something that happened because I guess just the way I am, maybe more outspoken or whatever, people enjoy in terms of like at least insight into Siege. But yeah, I mean, obviously I think my situation is pretty unique in that I was able to go from player to the general manager of the org. So, I'm essentially in charge of our teams for any of our games now. And then I still have the ability to stream a decent amount that people seem to enjoy. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think I'm lucky to have landed with Soniqs and be given all these opportunities. But at the same time, for a lot of people, I would just say like you never know what an opportunity can lead to, so you should put like as much effort as you can into it because my entire life was like grinding and trying to do everything I could to build my brand, to build the org's brand, to help the Siege team, to help wherever I could. And obviously that's created something for me. And, if you do reach the pro level, I think it's important to just like, I think some people get there and they're like, okay, I made it. And it's like, no, it's just begun now. You think you made it because you became a pro. No, now you're going to play against people who are really going to show you I'll be honest, like as a pro, I had a pretty successful career. I made a lot of majors and, world championships.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you go to those tournaments as somebody who's like more accomplished than most, like me, you get to those tournaments and you play some of those guys and you're like, that person is on an entirely different level than me. And we're both at this major tournament.
Wow.
And it's just, like you kind of, I think for a lot of people, you kind of have to make it to those tournaments to really realize that, like how different the levels go. But yeah, it's a grind to get to pro. And then once you get to pro, it's another grind to stay. And then to get to a point where like you're the guy calling the shots. You're the guy that like other people are worried about.
Yeah, you got to go. I feel like you got to go on sweat mode as soon as you go up there. You got to like really put 100% because now you're competing against people that they're to your same level or higher. That have more experience. I mean, I could just imagine the folks that have to face like for example, Shaiko.
Yeah,
It's like, whoa, wait 1 second. This guy is totally different. What the heck? Now I have
funny enough, you mentioned Shaiko. So in 2021, I had never played Shaiko, and we had BDS in our group in the Mexico major, and I remember playing them, and I was just like, this was on the old consulate, and I was sitting in garage between like if you played if you play Rainbow, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, then this is like I'm speaking like a different language to you. But I was sitting between the black car and the white van, like looking through the window towards the yellow door, and I just see like this figure go like this, like a little jiggle peek, and a nade just comes through, flies through the window, and just explodes right in my face. And Shaiko just naded me, and I was just like, I mean, there's literally nothing I could have done. I was just like, well, that guy's is different, I guess. But so, you know, that kind of is for a lot of people, that's going to be motivation. That there's as good as I am, or as much of as I've achieved, this guy's better, or this guy's achieved more. And so it's like the goal of any comp player should always be to win, right? And if you think that guy's better, or you don't think you could beat him, you got to figure out a way that you're going to beat him. And if that's not how you think, I don't really think you have the mindset of a comp. Like, you're not what I would say is like a world class player. Because some people are fine. Like, some people will just say Shaiko's better, or not. Like, we're using Shaiko as an example, but some people will be fine saying this guy's just better. I can't beat him. And it's like, well, you just told me you're a loser.
Yeah.
You got to find out. You got to do everything you can to beat him. And even if you give 100%, if you do everything you possibly can and you still can't beat him, at least you'll be able to know that you did everything you can. But if you just are like accepting like that guy's better, I'll never be able to do that. It's like, well, you'll never be able to do that because you just gave up the first hurdle, you know?
Yeah, that I for some odd reason I see like these NA teams versus, and EU teams, for example, BDS and all them. Do you feel like they have a different style of playing? It's like so.
Well, I think every region, and this is not just Siege specific, I think this is for every game, but every region plays differently. Like in Siege, I think North America have typically been more of a structured environment. They're more the way the teams play is more like ABC. It's like very structured, and the meta's changed. So right now, I do think it's a little more crazier. Like Brazil have always been known to be very aggressive and take a lot of risks, and EU have always been kind of like very calculated, and they play like cut off. They like to cut off the map a lot, and then APAC have always just been run around and just take gunfights and do everything crazy. So every region does play the game differently, which is why the international tournaments are always the best, because you see how the differing play styles like compete against each other. And right now, obviously the Brazilian play style seems to be the best. They've been the most successful over the last year or so. But yeah, I think that translates to every game. Is regions see the game differently, and then obviously they're all practicing against each other, so it just evolves in that region. But you're not like North America is not practicing against Brazil, or North America is not practicing against Europe very much, so it's not going to be you're not going to get that style really blended in until these international tournaments. And then what happens is you play the international tournaments, everybody sees, oh, Brazil is the best, so all the other teams are like, we need to try to emulate this. We have to try to play like that. So then everybody's trying to play like Brazil, and Brazil are changing to something else. And it's just a constant evolving cycle of somebody's ahead and everybody else is trying to play catch up. Like in Rainbow Six right now, W7M, by far the best team. They've won the last two majors. They're, a lot of people call them like the new G2 dynasty kind of team. Mm-hmm. Everybody's watching their games, trying to figure out why they're so good, how they play. And everybody's going to try to play like them. But the truth is you're not going to be able to play like them, right? Like, you can try to copy the style, but they're going to be if you're trying to beat them playing their style, they're going to beat you. It's their style, right? So you got to find what can beat this style, not just copy it. And
don't copy it.
That's kind of the evolution of metas and games, I guess I would say.
Now, you guys brought in Citizen.
Yeah.
Have you guys implemented anything that Citizen did in EU, like bringing it a little bit more to the NA?
I mean, Ben has obviously had his input and thoughts on like some things that G2 did, or some things that teams do in EU, and some of it has worked for us and some of it hasn't. The truth is like some of that stuff is EU meta, and like just the NA players are not that comfortable playing with it, and some of it has like helped us. And for him, I think it's also like he's been trying to adapt to like how NA plays, because like if you looked at his statistics from the first stage he played in NA, it wasn't very good. And then, you know, he played the NA qualifier for that major, and he was the #1 rated player in that qualifier, and then one of the highest rated players at the major. And then this last NAL stage that we won, he was, I think, the highest rated player on our team and one of the highest rated players in the league. So it's like, like even he had to take time to adapt just to a new region, because you know, the play styles are different.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought, that he would have to adapt a lot because he's so accustomed to a different style. And then coming with the Soniqs, he would have to give up some different type of techniques that he was using, you know, because it's so totally different, you know, versus what he was doing.
Well, you also have like I like to think, especially towards the end of my career, that I was like, my teams were very dominant in North America because I knew exactly how every single North American team played. Like I knew every team in NA plays slightly different. They like to do certain things. I know like they're better at certain maps than others, or I was able to like counter them easier on certain maps than others. So like I knew how every single team and every single player in my region played by the time I was like done playing. And I'm sure Ben probably had that same thing in EU, where he's playing against all the same people all the time. He knows how all the teams play. He knows how all the players play, the differences and the teams and things like that. If you go to a new region and you're playing a bunch of players that you're not very familiar with and a bunch of teams that you're not very familiar with, it's going to take some like getting used to.
Yeah, that's what I thought, you know, because it's so competitive, this game, and a lot of people don't know. And you know, no matter, Citizen is phenomenal. I looked him up once you told me about him. You know, you remember I DM'd you one time, and you're like, no, this guy is like one of the best, and I was like, okay, let me check him out. And when I started researching on him, I was like, wow, Soniqs got a treasure in their group.
Yeah.
You know, and that's going to be very beneficial to having a player that's from a different region come into the team. I mean, Sonic's doing phenomenal. I'm going to be really upfront with you. And I know that you as a manager, I mean, you're a manager, and I'm sure that you have your own pressure. You got your own stress that you got to make sure this team always ends up on top 5.
Well, so the difference is there are team managers and general, like I'm the general manager for the whole org. So it's not just Rainbow Six I have to worry about. It's PUBG right now. We just have the 2 teams, but we normally have more than that. So I have to worry about the success of both teams, because as a general manager, my job is I build the teams essentially, and I'm responsible for how they perform. Like a manager can strictly focus on one game. For me, I have to focus on multiple games, and obviously I come from Siege, so it's easier for me to deal with Siege than some of these other games, because like for instance, if I'm hopping into Rocket League, I don't really know much about Rocket League. I watch it. You can kind of tell who's good and who's not just from watching it, and we obviously have like some statistics and stuff that help you with that. But finding like a team manager or a coach in these kind of games that you can kind of trust to build a team or help build a team and like have the right play style, that's important. Is like I consider my job is like if I'm entering a new game, the number one thing for me is I either need to like have a star player that I just know like has a history of just being kind of the man or whatever in that game, or I need a coach that I talk to and I think they're smart and they have like a vision, and just go with that. Because I think it's foolish to just like pretend that, because we've had this in Siege, is where some orgs will just come in and they'll just build a team, but they're not really following like a certain philosophy, or the person they're putting in charge of their team has no history, or like there's nothing that you would credit them with that you would think they have the ability to build like a championship team. So it's like you have to, if you're entering a game and you don't really have the experience in that, you have to like start from the top to have like a foundation for the team. because otherwise it's not going to work, because you're going to have a bunch of different ideologies. You're probably going to end up changing your coaches all the time, because they'll probably be fighting or people trying to drop each other, and it's just like, I think if you're the manager of a team in a game, your main responsibility is to like establishing a foundation that the team can be built upon, and I think there are some managers or coaches out there who are more interested in protecting their own job really than like helping the team actually have success. It's always like a problem that I have with some coaches, and this is a player issue too, is when things are going bad, it's never how are we going to fix this? How can I make this team the best it could possibly be? It's like, who do I need to drop for this team to get better? Who do I need to get rid of for the team to get better? You have to try to fix it before you get to that point. If your immediate response is always next up, that's not like a coach mentality or a player mentality. That's just like, you're essentially just giving up and you're not trying to improve. When you get to the point where you're making a roster change, you should have extinguished every possibility that you could have to make it work. And then at that point you're saying, okay, there's just nothing else we can try here. It's just been too much. Now we move on. You at least know that you tried everything you could.
Yeah. I think that goes for every job. Where you work, you get a verbal warning, you get a first warning, second, third, and then if you on the third one you don't cut it, you're out.
Yeah.
Nothing you could do. And that is that's sad that some managers will do that. Okay, you're not performing, you didn't help out, you lost in this tourney.
I think it goes back to what you said earlier, is especially in esports, your job security is very fickle. So for some people, they're more interested in protecting, and I understand why, but they're more interested in protecting their own job than, kind of focusing on the team aspect of it. Like, if you're always blaming or you're always saying this person's the issue, that person's the issue, guess who's never the issue? You. So you'll survive and everybody else is going to go. But guess what? It gets to a point where I've changed everybody else on the team and we're still not very good, and you're the only common denominator left. So, you may as well try to make it work before you start, playing the blame game, because I think if people know enough about the games, like they'll see through that.
And you think the owners are like very aware of this issue?
I think it probably depends from organization to organization, because some owners are probably more involved than others in the day-to-day operations. Like some of the guys that own orgs are billionaires, multi-millionaires, are CEOs of huge companies. I don't think they're probably sitting there watching their Rainbow Six Siege teams suck and being like, what is he doing? They're just, I think there's some involvement from like some orgs, and probably the others, they just, throw some money at it and say, make it work.
Yeah, because I noticed like some owners, you'll see them more and they'll tweet about it, or and some you don't even know who they are. It's like, okay, who's the owner of this organization here?
Well, I think that's an interesting thing in esports. And to be honest, I think, right now we're kind of under the esports reckoning a little bit, where it seems like a lot of orgs are falling out, or a lot of the way money's being spent is much differently nowadays, is where esports is interesting, because you can have a game where one team has basically unlimited amounts of money. A billionaire owns the organization, for instance, and another team in the same league could be owned by one guy who's paying for it with his YouTube money. And it's just like, they're all in the same competitive field. But, in traditional sports, sure, you're going to have the small market. Like, I'll use baseball as an example. You have the Oakland A's against the New York Yankees and that kind of thing, right? But
yeah,
like, at the end of the day, all the guys that owns these teams are still billionaires, right? In the esports scene, like, it is all the backgrounds of the teams are much, much different. And I do think, like, using NA for an example, there's a drastic difference right now in North American Pro League, because some of the orgs are paying that middle to high income, and some of the orgs are honestly offering hundreds or very low thousands of dollars a month. And how is a team that's paying, I'll use an example, $500 a month going to compete with a team that's paying $8,000 a month? Like, you just realistically can't, because you also can't play, again, if you're the Oakland A's and you're a ball player on the Oakland A's and they're a small club, you're still getting paid a few $100,000 a year. Correct. If you're playing for a bottom pro league team and you're getting paid $500 a month, you can't play full time. Like, that's not a realistic situation. So you're also not only getting paid less, and you probably have worse players because the best players aren't going to play for that, but you also can't practice as much as the best team. So it's kind of a never-ending cycle of how the hell are you going to ever beat them? And like it becomes an issue where the goal of the players on the team is literally to just not win on the team they're on. It's to try to show that they're good enough that they can get on one of those other teams. And that's a problem, because half the league's competitive, half the league is trying to get on the other 5 teams.
Yeah, talking about that with the Yankees, ESPN did some like a segment on that. A lot of these players, their goal is to end up with the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, I think in professional sports that's kind of common, where, like, for instance, I grew up in Dallas, so obviously I'm a huge Cowboys fan, or Dallas Mavericks or Texas Rangers fan, right? And like, you grow up and your aspiration is I want to be the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And some people are lucky enough to where, yeah, that becomes a possibility. Their goal is to get on the Dallas Cowboys, and that's the goal with esports orgs, is that people grow up watching these teams and these games. And this is what's interesting about some of these games like League or Counter-Strike, where they've actually been around, and this is happening in Siege too, but where they've been around long enough to where people were growing up watching these teams and they've became huge fans of these teams or players, and they want to be on that team. That's like the goal of esports, is that the brand becomes the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Yankees, where people want to be on the team just because it's that team. Like, that's the end goal, because the money in esports, or for these orgs, at the end of the day, all of the money is the brand. Like, that's what's worth money. The sponsors care about your brand, the players care about your brand, the fans care about the brand. What your brand is what's worth. That's what makes Dallas Cowboys the most valuable sports franchise in the world, because you can say Dallas Cowboys to people in Europe and they'll know what you're talking about. They'll say, why is it called football? They play with their hands, but everybody knows the name. It's a brand.
It's a brand, yeah. Well, I could imagine how many players felt when TSM left, because a lot of them wanted to go to TSM.
Yeah, I mean, I think with TSM leaving, that was I know the TSM team had been struggling a bit, and obviously we know TSM, the org, has undergone a lot of issues after the FTX thing, it seems like, where they even got out of League. So I don't think that was like a Siege only issue. But yeah, I mean, that I know for a lot of players that was like, oh, like, what's happening in Siege? Obviously it turns out that was a bigger thing than just Siege. It was TSM, the org, was having issues, but like that was like a doomsday for a lot of players. Is like, if TSM is leaving, and at the time I think they were the defending world champions, then what hope do I have? Like, what team am I going to be on? Is it even worth pursuing?
Yeah, what I'm going to do now, where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
They're just like, okay, my goal was to join this team, this org, and now they're no longer. So what are you going to do now? And that's kind of crazy, because a lot of the guys, they think about the money, because I know TSM was paying a lot to these players. They're paying insanely a lot of money.
I mean, the money is important because, like we already mentioned, the esport careers aren't very necessarily long, and like the truth is unless you're playing one of those major franchise games, you're probably not going to make like life-changing money anyway. You're going to make enough to be sustainable, or if you're lucky, like I said, $100,000-$200,000 a year. If you win a lot, it's like the difference between being on a top team, making $150,000 a year, and being on a mid-tier team making $40,000 a year. Like, dude, that's a huge difference, especially for people who have sacrificed a lot to get to that point. Like, having some money, banked up for when you're when you're moving on. Like that's a big deal. Like you want to be on, and that's why those teams are obviously more competitive. But the money is obviously money. Everybody can say, because it's true, you do play for the passion, you do pay for to compete and everything. But at the end of the day, I mean, you got to say, like, the money is what drives everything, right? Like this room I'm in, I bought this house with money I made from playing Siege. Like,
Wow.
you asked me 5 years ago, like, this is a funny story. I played on Era like 6 years ago, and I made Six Invitational, the second Six Invitational on PC. So we were a really good team to make Six Invitational. I was making $800 a month on that team.
Wow.
Right? When I retired from playing, I was making over $100,000, and I was able to buy a house by the time I stopped playing. I was literally able to retire. I moved to Pennsylvania, where the Soniqs are based out of, and I bought my own house. And that's with 5 years of playing that game and building my brand and nothing else. I didn't have any kind of side job. That was all from Siege. And it's like, you can set yourself up like that. Wow. Or you can be complacent and not want to build a brand, not want to, like, it is a game, but to a lot of people, because I hate when people say it's just a game. It's like, it is a game, but to some people, this is their fucking life. Like, people would die. Like, this is their passion. This is what people literally would die. People would die to be a pro player, right? Like,
correct.
Like, you can't. I hate when people downplay. Oh, you're just a pro at a game. It's like, dude, would you say that to like a bench? Would you say that to an NBA player? Because it's essentially the same thing. Like,
correct.
You're chasing your passion to be a professional basketball player. Well, guess what? Not everybody's 6'5" and 40-inch vertical, right? Being a professional esport player is more obtainable for most people.
Yeah.
Like, I hate that shit when you want to downplay. Oh, you just play video games. It's like, no, I don't just play video games. I'm the fucking best at this video game.
Correct. Compete and this is your life and your career. This is why that's one of the main. That's like what we were talking about before. That's why I advise a lot of these players. Hey, get into content, stream your stuff. Build a rapport on social media. Get out there. What I find kind of like, I'm trying to figure out, how did Jinxie ended up where he's at right now? I mean, he turns on his console and he's already pulling 40,000 viewers. Okay. And he's not a pro player.
I don't think I like, Jinxie is a very funny person, and he grinded a lot, because I remember seeing Jinxie when he had like 100 viewers. Like, he's put in a ton of time to that, and he's entertaining. And like, this is the truth, is like, unless you are just so unbelievably good at this game or any game, like, most people don't really care. Like, the esports, like, using Rainbow Six Siege as an example, the casual audience of the game is much bigger than the esport audience, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, you can't just market yourself as like, I'm a pro player, watch me play. Like, you'll get 50, 100 views, sure. But if you want to be a bigger deal than that, like, you got to offer something else. And the truth is like, for most people, you just have to be like entertaining, be funny. Like, the easy, and I know you can't just say, oh, be funny. Some people are just not funny, but like,
yeah,
that's the truth, is like, you have to, if you're streaming, you got to sit there and talk to chat. You got to have like reactions. You have to have a personality. You can't just be like, unless you are just so unbelievably good that people will just watch you play because they're amazed at like how good you are. You got to have like a personality. You can't just be, a piece of paper playing a video game, because like, there's 50 different, there's 20 pros streaming. I'll watch the one that's funny, right? Like,
yeah. That's true, because I mean, you think about it, you got these other content creators like Dr. Disrespect. He has his character. Obviously.
Well, he has unbelievable production as well. Like, his stream production that's one of the things that made him so popular. Is it's not just his character, but his stream production around his character elevates the stream to where it's like, wow, like, this is just, this guy's funny, and he's look at what you can tell how much effort he's putting into like all this shit.
Yeah, that's great. I'm kind of amazed that I don't think he's partner with any organization. I know SSG.
I mean, for most,
see,
the truth is, for most content creators, there's not that big. It kind of goes both ways a little bit, but like, if you're a huge, like, let's say you're Dr. Disrespect and you sign to an org, there's a potential, because I'll use King George as an example, actually. If King George is signed to an org, there's a potential that a conflict with the org sponsor, as opposed to himself, could prevent him from having a sponsorship. If you're just a content creator on your own, you're never going to have anything that prevents you from being able to take sponsorships. So like, and to be honest, like, as from an org, I always use this example. It's like XQC, who's probably the most famous streamer in the world, like the biggest streamer in the world, right? He just signed that like $100 million deal with Kick or whatever, right? XQC was signed to Luminosity Gaming for years. Who the fuck knew XQC was on Luminosity Gaming?
I'm
Right.
just right now.
And how much money did they have to pay him to be part of their org? So like, at the same time, for a content creator, is it worth signing to the org to potentially lose sponsors? Unless you can work your contract where, you know, it's not going to conflict. From an org, is it worth it to spend this much money on a content creator when, like, if you're going to spend that much money, you got to make sure you are utilizing them in your marketing. Like, I think SSG does a really good job with Jinxie. He probably helps him sell a ton of like skins in Siege. But like, using the XQC example, there's no fucking, like, nobody fucking cares that XQC was on Luminosity.
No.
Nobody even, you're just finding out.
Yeah, I'm just finding out now.
It's like, if you're going to, like, you have to think about how you're going to use it. It's not just, oh, we have this big name for us. It's like, okay, well, and?
Yeah. Take advantage, you know, because it's very hard. I mean, if I was an owner of an organization, or general manager as yourself, you know, I would make sure if I'm going to bring somebody, have a content creator, I want to make sure this person has a good rapport, that is good, that it won't jeopardize the organization.
I mean, that's with anybody. That's with that's something that players should also keep in mind. If you have any competitive aspiration, I always say this: one, don't be a dickhead to other players, because like, this has happened a lot with like up and coming players where they talk shit or whatever, and like, guess what, you ended up talking shit to the wrong guy, and that's the guy on the pro team that you're trying to get on, and now you can't get on that team. So like, just keep it to yourself. Nobody's going to think you're cooler because you're roasting somebody in like a chat. And don't, you know, I know times have changed a lot, especially, you know, like, I call this like the cancel era, where people look for a reason to basically cancel you. Like, choose your words wisely. A lot of times it's just going to be better if you don't have the ability to identify like political correctness. Just just choose your words wisely, because you could say the wrong thing and then that'll stop you from getting on a team. Like, even if you didn't mean anything by it, you could just say something like, as in a stupid joke or whatever, gets taken the wrong way. It's just like, if you're trying to be a player and you're coming up and things like that, just be very careful about how you how you portray yourself, right? Like, I just think that has ended up being an issue for some people, unfortunately.
It is. As a matter of fact, that's what basically I do for Wildcard. You know, they got me in as a communication Twitch / specialist. I'd be reading all the stuff, rules and regulations, what these guys are doing, you know, what they're putting in and implementing on rules. Nowadays, you know, and I tell them, if you're streaming, let me know. I get the notification. I'm going to be watching. If I say, look at your DM, go immediately to your DM. Something you did that you shouldn't have said or whatever, and you're going to have to do something about it, because it could, you know, the organization doesn't want any involvement of anything, you know, of political stuff or whatever. For an example, I even try to help out Thaqil, Thaqil, Thaqil. And I said, hey, listen, you want me? I'll help. I'll mod for you, because there were certain hours he'll be playing, and I have some free time, and I used to watch him. And none of his mods gave him like, hey, you shouldn't say this joke. Be very careful. I would have told him, listen, tell me the joke first, and I will tell you, yeah, you could say that live. But he went ahead and said it, and it was a black and white joke. Guess what? He lost his charm. Immediately they took it out. Now, if he was a pro player, he would have had to been kicked, no matter how simple it was. And he was like, it was just a silly, dumb, doesn't matter. If you would have asked me, I would have told you, make a reference between a tiger and a lion. Don't use color.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not really that familiar with the situation, but I do think like it kind of goes back to what I just said. You just always have to keep in mind the like political correctness of what you're saying, and like identifying. Because I think I was always pretty good at this, because obviously I'm known as more controversial, but I was pretty good at always kind of towing the line, and like understanding what would be like, even like trash talk and stuff like that. You never want to go too far. Like, for instance, nothing like I fucking hate when people, if you want to trash talk somebody in the game and call them a bad player, a bad coach, whatever, you get shit on, all that kind of stuff, right? Whatever. But then people are going to start calling them ugly or fat or stupid. And it's like, you want to talk about somebody's physical appearance because they're better than you at a video game? Like, are you a loser? Like, I hate when things like, to be honest, I just don't think anything should ever get like personal. And obviously people elevate it to that level a lot. And it's just like understanding like, it's really not that serious. Like, oh, you're worse than this person, so you need to try to hurt their feelings. Like, okay, big man, you're so tough, kind of thing. It's just like, it's a lot. Most of the time, it's just going to be better to stay out of it or not say anything at all.
Yeah. Now, do you put your players under, that structure, that rule? Like, okay, guys.
I mean, my rule for the players is like, don't be stupid. If you do something stupid, you know what happens. Like,
yeah.
Like, to me, if you can't control yourself to where you are acting in a positive manner, like, you're not really somebody that I want on my team anyway. Like, I shouldn't have to give you a rule set of how a human should behave that people are not going to be offended by. I should be able to trust you to not be a jackass. And if you're a jackass, well, then I don't have time for you.
No matter how good they are?
I mean, that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter. Yeah. I know, there's some people think since they're the best on their team and they're like the number
Nobody
one,
is ever irreplaceable.
that is my rule of thumb. That goes even where I work, and I work in a hospital, and I hear, the nurses complaining and people complain. I said, remember, you could be replaced tomorrow. Trust me. There's a line of people.
Yeah, like with anything in the, like any kind of job, especially in like esports, it's like there are a million people waiting to take your spot.
Yeah, a lot.
Right. And like, okay, maybe this guy isn't as good of a player as you, but maybe he'll have a better attitude and maybe he'll put in more effort. And that's fine.
When it comes to content creation, I notice there are some people, their attitudes, their egos, they're very cocky. And I don't want to mention any names, but you know this person. And I gone to his stream, and it's just like brags so much about what he has, brags about how much money he makes, or brags about the stuff that he buys. And I'm like, dude, for what? And then, they always stick out, when he was, a pro and all this and that. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just like, when is SUPR coming on? Because honestly, usually I think the more humble and is the best approach to take things, especially in esport. It you would be more in favor.
I
And
think the truth is, I think most like professional athletes, whether it's in esports or anything, they're gonna have an ego because that's kind of like a little bit. That's like a confidence thing. Like you're better than this person. Like, but you have to be able to like differentiate your ego within the game to like your actual life. And like I always take that kind of shit where people are like, I'll do it sometimes jokingly, right? Like
Mhm.
you can brag like jokingly or whatever, be like funny. But if people are like seriously doing that, I always just take that as like insecurity. Is like, oh, you're trying to prove to everybody else how much you have or how much better you are than them. Like to me, that's like an insecure thing. A confident person does not need the approval of everyone else to and like that's kind of how my whole career operated. Is a lot of people didn't like me and then some people ended up liking me, is because I don't really give a fuck what like somebody, if I say something and I support this or I support that, some people are not going to like it and some people are, and I don't really give a shit either way. But I'm like,
Correct.
I'm confident that what I'm saying is what I believe. And um I feel like if you're I'm not seeking like the approval from people. You'll either, it's just like some people like the thought and some people won't. And I feel like if you're always like going out of your way to like impress people or brag or make yourself feel more important to other people, then it's just like, I mean, I don't know if it's for everyone, but I see through that. That's just like insecurity.
Yeah, it's like it's very immature way to how to approach things, and do things.
I will
I remember.
say, sorry to interrupt you, but I will say, like going back to that thought, that I think a lot of that does come from in esports. A ton of people are younger, and I think that is part of growing up as well. Is like, because I won't lie, when I was younger, I made like some stupid purchases because I thought it was cool, or I thought my friends would think it was cool, or whatever. Like you grow up and you realize, like, you know, I've got a pair of $1,000 tennis shoes in the closet. That's kind of fucking stupid. I don't even wear them, but it was really cool for like a couple of months, 5 years ago. It's like, okay, like it's to me, it is part of growing up. Like I do get that, but I do think like if you're a 25-year-old man doing that, then like maybe you need to hit the fast forward on the growing up part.
You gotta, I'm in my 40s,
Yeah.
so I never been that. I mean, I was raised very, very, very poor in Puerto Rico, um, very poor, and I just learned to appreciate the little things. Even people when they donated gifts, or whatever. Here, take this, and I never forget one day what I was working when I got out of high school. I went to go ahead and study in the hotel industry because it's like, it's like me. I'm now in Florida. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
thing to go into the hotel industry. So working at Disney or et cetera. So I worked in a hotel and there was this guy that was at a mini bar just bragging how much money he made and how much money he makes and stocks and all this and that. And he was wearing I think he said had a $3,000 suit and all this and that. And it was just bragging the whole entire night. And I think it's because there were some ladies there and they were drinking. And I think he was trying to get their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, shorts, sandals, feet all dirty, button shirt, he went up to him and said, "Listen, the day you make the amount of money that I make and I have, you would never have to brag ever again." When they told him, what does he do? He owns like this big, yeah, he's okay. People were like, whoa.
Yeah.
And he asked, who was that guy? The older guy. And he goes, he's the owner of this big, massive company that ships, food and goods overseas, so he's just like a billionaire,
Mm-hmm.
like a billionaire. And there's some people you just don't know, and they just don't need to brag about it, and it having people brag and just show, all this stuff, it's not good. It's really not good. I always tell all these guys, stay humble, be quiet, keep your mouth shut, because you never know. Because one in the future, you may want to go to a team but you've been so toxic against them, they probably will pick you up.
Yeah.
And that'll be really, really sad. And so it kind of like, at the end of the day, you just got to be humble. I really admire that, and I like the way how you do your thing, and you have this dry sense of humor sometimes, and you just like say some things, and I think that's what captivates a lot of people going into your stream, and I always say the way who you are show, your chat that you have will be the same way. If you're toxic, you're gonna have a toxic group. It's really weird how I notice how the algorithm, is with Twitch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the personality of the streamer, people who have similar personalities usually are going to gravitate towards that streamer, right? Like, if you find, I'll use Jinxie as an example, right? He has kind of like a younger generation humor. And so a lot of like people who are attracted to that kind of humor, they like watching Jinxie, and it's extremely popular. Using myself as an example, I don't have the same type of humor as Jinxie, and I think like an older generation think I'm funny, but I guarantee that Jinxie's viewers, for the most part, probably would not think I'm very funny. So like people just gravitate towards what their own generations or what similar personalities.
That is so true, because I mean, I'm gonna reveal my age. You're gonna probably you wait. I always say that I'm the same age as Dr. Disrespect, which I am not. I am actually 46. And I don't like to say. One time I said it I was playing with some people, and they're like, "Oh, you want to play next?" I was, "Yeah, sure." And then they asked me, "Hey, how old are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm 45 or something like that." It's about a year ago. Like, "Oh, okay." And I noticed a cold shoulder all of a sudden. I was like, "Dang." "Oh no, man, listen, a friend of mine, I'm gonna invite him." And I was like, "Okay, fine, no problem." And then I said, "Okay, next time when they ask me this, I'm just gonna
if
say."
you think about it, like the majority, like I won't say the majority, but a lot of people who are playing games are like younger 20s, teens, that kind of thing, right? The older you are, and this goes back to what I said earlier, is like video games are a thing for everyone, right? But that means everyone can play. And so like, if I'm 35 or you're 46 or my dad's 60, I don't, is a 21-year-old, a 18-year-old, a 19-year-old really going to want to play with you? Because to be honest, I'd probably feel weird about playing with like, like we have a guy who's joining our Siege team who is 17. He turns 18 next year. I'm literally twice this guy's age. Like, if I was still playing, I would feel weird. I'd be like, dude, am I allowed to even like talk? Like, what are the rules here? Can I even talk to this guy? Like, that's this video games. Like, and that's what makes it interesting and cool, is like people of all generations, all ages, everybody's playing it. But yeah, the truth is like a lot of the time you probably are better off finding people of your shared experiences or personality types, and try not to mix and match too much, because again, like what a 20-year-old thinks, a 40-year-old probably doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, I always say the thing, would 20-year-old you want to hang out with like 40-year-old you? It's probably like, no, you think I'm a fucking loser.
It's funny, because I changed I changed what I say. I say now when they ask me, I say I'm the same age as Dr. Disrespect. For some odd reason, psychologically,
So like Dr. Disrespect's cool.
Yeah. Dr. Disrespect.
I just always say I'm 19.
Wait.
I'm the only man who's never. I'm Benjamin Button. I just never age. I'm always 19.
By the way, that was a great movie.
Yeah, I did like that movie.
I even bought it on DVD. That was a phenomenal movie by Brad Pitt. That was a phenomenal movie. Yeah. So, quite out of eastward, you were always born and raised in Texas.
Yep, from Dallas area.
Dallas. I was. I think I was 5, 6 years old. My mom married my stepdad that was from Houston. So I lived in Baytown Texas in Houston. So I went to Little League. I was a little kid, and I truly enjoyed it. Had a blast. And my stepdad, he was like, "Well, son, he had that southern, Texan accent.
Talk like this.
Yeah, you're gonna have here a belt buckle. This is a belt buckle.
Yeah.
No more Puerto Rico island stuff, son." He gave me a big sucker, cowboy boots, Wrangler jeans.
Yeah.
He turned me into a cowboy, and then he's the one that got me into to the NFL. Learning.
Well, I was gonna say, like, how long did you live in Texas when you were growing up?
Oh, jeez. I think I was like 2 years or 2 to 3 years.
Because I always, when I talk to people about Texas, it's like growing up in Texas, you don't understand. If you're from somewhere else, you don't understand how important sports are unless you're from Texas. Like growing up in Texas, football was the most important class I took. Like like high school sports in Texas and college sports it's like professional teams basically for the schools. Like I went to a school, we had an indoor and an outdoor field. We had 100,000 square foot gym, and multiple people that I went to school with are now professional athletes. And it's like, you're not getting that. Like, it's just the Dallas Cowboys is in Texas. It's like God first and then the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like that's how it goes. Like
when he raised me up, rest in peace, he passed away. It was God first, Cowboys, and WWF by that time before it switched to WWE.
Yeah.
I was watching, all the Jake the Snake Roberts, and then with football, it was so embedded. It's like a religion, it's like football is, you're gonna learn about football. And I didn't know diddly squat. I was a little kid, because the major sports in the island, Puerto Rico, it's not even soccer. I say remotely. I mean, it's baseball.
Yeah, I was gonna say in professional baseball, there's a lot of Puerto Rican players, so that's not surprising.
Yeah. It's baseball, boxing, and basketball. Those are the three. That's it. Nothing else. Now, I think not too long ago, by 5 years or 6 years ago, or 8, I can't even remember. They just started having a soccer team, and it's really not that good. I don't even know they're still in, and it's really not that popular. But yeah, and now they're bringing in the island NFL football. So a lot of people starting to learn it. A lot of bars are putting, NFL games.
That's interesting because, like, in America, I read a recent report that, like, Little League football and, like, high school football, the amount of people who have been, like, signing up are way down. Because, like, as the NFL's gotten more and more over time, the adults are growing up with it and seeing the effects of getting hit all the time. And they're steering their kids to play other sports.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because of the concussion?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen like a lot of examples. People, once they're post careers, is they're either beat the shit's just beat out of them, so they're never just healthy, or they have like the CTE and things like that. Like, a lot of kids are being steered towards safer sports like baseball or basketball or soccer.
Yeah,
because soccer is I think soccer is the number one growing like youth sport right now in the US.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, there's some nasty injuries in soccer. A lot of people don't know, even in baseball. I was watching the shorts, YouTube shorts, and there was this guy hit try to hit a midfield, but hit the pitcher.
Yeah.
It was just like really bad. I was like, ouch, that had to hurt really bad.
I guess nothing compares to like the repetitiveness of football. It's like you are just getting, especially at like a professional level, those guys are so big and so fast, like it's like a freight train hitting you. I remember, it makes me think of so I went to school with a guy named Rex Burkhead. He was an NFL player for the Patriots. He was on a few teams. He won the Super Bowl with Tom Brady, and we had like a practice, and it was like a tackle drill or something. I forget what it's called, but it's like you line up 3-on-3 in like a little lane, and you run, and then he tackles you. And I was running the ball, and he tackled me, and I think I had a concussion. Like nothing happened, but he hit me so hard. And this is in high school, but this like everybody just knew, like he was one of the biggest recruits in the nation. I think he was an All-American at Nebraska. Like everybody knew this guy was going places, and he hit me so fucking hard. It like I lost my breath. I started seeing stars, and I was just like, dude, like, and that's in high school. So I can't imagine being a professional, like getting hit by those guys. Like it's crazy.
It takes a toll on your body. A lot of them nowadays, they're just like going to the doctors constantly. There were their knee injuries. They were talking about how many of them are like bankrupt, but there was another thing. They were just like full of medical bills because they're just like repeating going to the doctors because their knees are messed up, or they have other injuries on them, that they can't, be able to fully heal or fix, because it's just like that's their job. They just go in and get hit. Was he what position was he?
The running back.
Oh jeez, like an Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, I think in the NFL he was never like a full-time back. He was like a third down special teams kind of player. Which is probably why he had a pretty long career, because I think it's like notorious now that like running backs don't play very long in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, I just couldn't imagine like taking those hits for years and years and years. Like it's no wonder that so many of them end up having, issues like post-career or even during their careers.
Yeah,
because like what's weird too is like baseball players, for instance, or basketball players get paid way more than the NFL players. Like baseball players are the highest paid athletes in America.
Now, I always try to figure out, I wonder why that is, because you look at their stadiums, they're never jam-packed like
I think it's because they play with the TV broadcasting rights, and you say like the some of the stadiums are jam-packed depending on which teams it is, but it also goes back to the fact that they play like 162 games. So in the NFL, you play 17 games and then the playoffs. So you're selling that for a couple months. For baseball, you're playing 162 games and then the playoffs. So that shit's like year round, basically. Like,
yeah,
more people can go to the games because it's almost all the time. It's on TV all the time because they're literally playing every day. So that's where the money comes from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I was like, man, they're spitting out a lot of money for just one player, and offer them $70 million.
Well, like that Ohtani, that's a free agent right now. The rumor is he's going to get like a 10-year contract for like $500 million or something. It's just like, okay.
Has there how much was Alice Rodriguez?
At the time, I think it was 10 years and like $325 million, which was like, that was like 15. I don't even know how many years ago that was, but like in terms of that was an insane amount of money compared to like what it is now.
Yeah.
Like the inflation on that's probably like fucking $500-600 million. Oh
gosh. That is crazy. That is crazy. I would have thought that the NFL players, they would be getting paid a little bit more. But yeah, going back to getting hit and being injured, that's I didn't know that right now the rates of people joining in is a lot less than it was before. I mean, I would think about it twice if I had to go against Troy Polamalu.
Yeah.
I'm getting hit by that guy.
Yeah.
He will put a hurt into your body. Well, Seth, hopefully this is not the first and the last. I know I'm gonna cut down some time here, and I know you got some errands and things to do. I want to thank you so much for participating on the podcast, and tell everybody that is listening where to find you. Go ahead. The websites, everything, the merch, everything. Go ahead.
Yep. If you ever want to watch me, I stream occasionally at twitch.tv/SUPR. And to be honest, I don't really do much else. You can learn more about the Soniqs on www.soniqs.gg. Soniqs, not Sonics.
There you have it, folks. Well, okay, Seth. Thank you so much. God bless you. And hopefully next time we could schedule another appointment, another podcast.
That's the hospital talking right there.
Yeah, it is.